Well, the Gautrain is without question one of the most impressive infrastructure developments in South Africa since 1994, and it is likely to revolutionise the way that South Africa moves around for the next 20 to 30 years. However, taxpayers will fork out nearly 900 million rand in the current fiscal year. That's to subsidise its operations, and this could be at the expense of other transport options. So is this a viable long-term investment? Was it a viable long-term investment? Those are the questions we're asking, and we're asking about the future of transport here on the show today. Joining us to unpack this, Jessica Hubbard from Finweek, Ollis DA Member of Parliament and National Spokesperson on Transport, and Barbara Jensen, Gautrain Management Agency Spokesperson. Thank you all for joining us. It's good to have you both on the desk with us. Mark, I'm going to start off with you. I suppose this is the $900 million question that we're asking this year. Was it worth it? And of course, this is the story that you chose to put on the cover this week. Yeah,
so James pitched the story to me saying, there's a very interesting background to the Gautrain. I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. I believe it's one of the most impressive transport infrastructure projects we've undertaken ever, and I think that it genuinely has a very, very bright future. And in fact, I get excited about it. In fact, I think I tweeted about it when I was at the Joburg airport. I actually had to wait because the trains were full the first time round, and I had to wait for the next train to come through. And I mean, as much as an inconvenience, I actually think it's really cool that South Africans have adopted the use of public transport. I mean, we are crying out for really top quality public transport. I think what James was trying to unpack here is just how much are we subsidising the Bombela consortium that's operating it, or concession I should say, and is it at the expense of other people, at the expense of investments into other projects, and ultimately how do we scale up the Gautrain in such a way that it'll be a viable long-term project? And I think for me, the numbers are huge. I mean, we're looking at this infrastructure projects that they were trying to roll out across South Africa, and there's a huge amount of money subsidising the Gautrain as it is at the moment. How do we get to the point where it's viable?
So there we go. You're a Gautrain commuter, and of course saying yes, when you do use it, you see the value of it. Barbara, give us an idea right now of how many South Africans are using the Gautrain.
Well, we have about 48,000 to 50,000 passenger trips per day, per weekday on the Gautrain system. We have about 20,000 people using the bus. So we had a 90% growth in the bus users from last year to this year. We have an 18% year-on-year growth on the Gautrain. So the commuting is looking good. We have capacity problems in the morning. So I see the front page say we're in a crisis. I think there are many rail systems in the world that are startups that would like to have the crises that we have. We run train punctuality at 98.6%. That means that a train arrives at a station within 3 minutes that it was scheduled to arrive. We run train availability at 99.6%, which means the trains are available to complete the whole route. So in terms of performance, we are really doing very well. As I said, we've got the capacity problems in the morning. It's a very good problem to have, but it also leads to your commuters experiencing discomfort in the trains. Mm-hmm. We have increased quite a substantial amount of trains to 8-car trains during the peak. In the next 2 hours, in the next 2 weeks, we're putting another 8-car train in on the morning and the afternoon peak, and in June another 8-car train. So we have capacity problems. That's why we have to look at.
But you're still not meeting the break-even point when it comes to commuters, because according to this report, 110,000 commuters is what you need to have on a daily basis to reach break-even.
That we said would be in year 5. Mm-hmm. We're in year 1 of full operations, and we are really, we've got the capacity problems. When we look at patronage guarantees, and that's what I have not seen the article, but what a patronage guarantee is, and about 2 years ago, the World Bank did studies on successful rail systems across the world. I think they did surveyed about 12. Of that, 9 were successful. One of them was Gautrain. And the 9 that were successful all had patronage guarantees. You would not get a private company, the private sector, interested in a system such as Gautrain if government that's providing the system do not provide a guarantee that their minimum required total revenue will be met. The patronage guarantee and the amount that we would have paid have always been part of Gautrain since 2006, when National Treasury approved the affordability on Gautrain. So the patronage guarantee is nothing new. It was part of our financial modelling, and it is just how quick we can ramp up from, we have currently, as I said, about 50,000. How quickly can we make the next 50,000? And we've given ourselves about 3 years to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, could we say that genuinely in year 3 of this project, we're going to be at 110,000 people, and how are we going to get there? I mean, that seems to be the question that's out there at the moment is, we've got X amount, the popular routes are the Pretoria, Joburg and the airport, and the airport one seems to have fallen off. I mean, I think you are quoted saying that has to do with the decline in air traffic.
Yes, that's true.
But I mean, the numbers are incredibly low on that particular route,
No,
though, to the airport?
No, we had from August 2012 to March to 2013, we had a drop of 3.15% on our airport patronage. Although our market share of the airport passengers stayed the same. We have between 8 to 10% of the airport passengers that we carry. That has stayed the same. So the only assumption that one can make, and that's not been tested, is that people coming in and out of Ortia, Tambo, also has dropped. But our market share in terms of airport passengers has stayed constant.
I'd like to give Ian a chance to step in here. Ian, you've been quite outspoken about all sorts of things that have kind of gone wrong at the Gautrain.
Yes.
But I'd like to give you, a chance to really, let's start off with the issue around patronage guarantee.
Sure.
Where do you stand on that?
Okay, the first problem that I have with this patronage guarantee is not that we have a patronage guarantee. I think I agree with Dr. Jensen that, in fact, many of these new startups do have patronage guarantees. But we have a massive problem here. The first problem is that we don't know what the content of the contract between government and the concessionaire looks like. It's secret. The DA has attempted many, many times to get hold of that contract, and we've been turned down. We've tried the legal route, we've tried to use the Gauteng government, our presence there. We can't get sight of this contract. So what we don't know is this. We don't know what the requirement is of the concessionaire in terms of providing sufficient rolling stock to cover the problems that we've been seeing during peak hours. Because we don't know that, if there's a refusal to provide sufficient rolling stock to provide for all the passengers who want to ride the trains in the mornings, we don't know if they're allowed to say no or not, because we don't see the contract. The public doesn't know what this contract looks like. We in the DA and in opposition parties don't know what this contract looks like. That's a huge problem, because it goes to the credibility of the arrangements on the patronage guarantees. It's not saying we shouldn't have them, it's just saying, how do we know whether it's a decent deal for the public? And therefore, if I can just finish quickly, the other end of the problem is that we've got to provide all this extra money because there are not enough people running on the trains, but we don't know if there are enough trains for the people that want to ride on it. That means that you've got a double deal. The concessionaire demands the money because there are not enough people, but the concessionaire won't show you how many trains they're required to provide in the contract, and therefore they could actually just keep saying there are not enough passengers, there are not enough passengers. When people stand on the platform in Centurion at 7:30 in the morning and email me to say, I can't get on the train's full, that's unfair. We want to see this contract so that we can evaluate. The public should be able to evaluate whether they're getting a fair deal for this large amount of money that we have to fork out every month.
Is it a secret contract?
Well, it's a commercial contract. It's a contract between a public entity, the Gauteng provincial government and national government, and a private company. So in the sense that it's a commercial contract, there are certain confidentiality clauses to that. I think when we look at how many rolling stock, we have a Gautrain Management Agency and we have the Bombela Agency. We have to trust public officials in the sense that
no,
but I mean, if we have to, if Obviously, we have, as the Gauteng provincial government, the biggest vested interest to as quickly as possible to get rid of the patronage guarantee, because then we can pay off our loan quicker, and we can extend the system quicker, and we can buy rolling stock. We currently have enough rolling stock to demand to meet the demands, and it's not only buying extra. No, it is. It's not. It's also not. It's also not about only rolling stock. It's also looking at, can we reduce the headways on the train? So instead of having a 12-minute interval between trains in peak hour, can we go down to 10 minutes? So buying extra rolling stock is not the only measure to manage demand on a rail system.
But should there be a discussion that's being had now? I mean,
we're having that discussion.
But why is the discussion happening now when we look at the business plan? I mean, sure, we must have known there's ultimately, let's say we know, 2010, we know what the state of the global economy is like. We know air traffic is going to decline.
I think, but you also need to, from James's article, we picked up that the patronage guarantee had to be extended by about 200 million, and there are problems that were overlooked, such as the cable theft. So clearly there are problems in the inception phases, and the planning phases that are catching up to the Gautrain now. And who takes responsibility for those issues that we're now having to deal with?
Well, asking a question, who takes responsibility for it? Gauteng is a private partnership. Public-private partnership. So we look at risk allocation. So certain of the risks lies with the concession company. Certain of those risks lie with the province. If we look at, we talk about the reduction of 2010 or the airport link. By the time that the global economy had a downturn, we already had the airport link operational. We are looking at measures, and they're currently on the table, that we are looking at during off-peak periods to look at fare reduction. That from about 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the afternoon, that there will be a reduction in the price of your ticket. So there are ways what we are looking at. But one thing is sure, is that the current rolling stock that we have can manage, and other measurements we can manage.
I think that we need to also look at other issues around this, because you look at, for example, Metro Rail, which is said to transport around 2.3 million people, and then you've got the Gautrain at around 43,000, as you say right now, just under 50,000. And we know that the Metro Rail, yes, and PRASA is going through a big 123 billion rand upgrade program, but ultimately, at what expense has national transport been, I suppose, put on the sidelines? Sacrificed, where the Gautrain has been, I suppose, subsidised by the South African government to the detriment of, say, more people in South Africa travelling on safer, secure transport. Firstly, your view on that, Ian?
Fine. I just want to go back to the 690 million, which was budgeted as the ridership guarantee, and now we're paying more than that. The article states that the original estimates done by the concessionaire for patronage are much higher than what we're actually seeing. So the concessionaire originally told us, these are the number of people that will ride on this train, therefore you should invest. Now those people are not pitching up to ride on the train. So there is a credibility problem around that, because we, at the end of the day, as taxpayers, are going to fund when it doesn't work. And of course, what Barbara has just told us about the arrangements that are being made, it's a secret what this contract says. So we don't know, with all due respect to Barbara, I believe that she's an honest person, but the content of the contract is secret. I don't know whether what she's saying is actually valid, because I can't look at the contract. Now when we look and compare with alternative modes of transport, the money that we're having to invest in this system, partly because it's not performing in terms of attracting the number of riders that it should.
110,000 riders.
Yes. We're not growing at the numbers we should be growing at this point in time in order to offset this ridership on this guarantee on this train. We should have achieved a higher ridership at this point in time if we're going to get rid of this guarantee that is costing so much money. And I wonder whether government didn't not pay enough careful attention to the estimates and whether they were valid and whether this could actually be achieved within the time frame. I don't agree that there have been enough trains and coaches available to this point in time. I hear that Barbara has now said they're going to provide additional ones in 2 weeks' time, and then some more later on. But until now, they haven't been sufficient. We in the DA in Parliament are getting emails from the public, frustrated, particularly at the Centurion station, saying, I had to wait. The train arrived, it was full, I couldn't get on. I eventually got in my car and drove to work. So there haven't until now been sufficient trains, and the ridership pattern is quite different, I think, to what was originally expected. What was expected is that people will ride during the off-peak periods a lot more than what they are.
And
we don't
be able to work with flexi hours or something like that.
Exactly, and we don't see that happening. Everyone wants to ride at the same time. We don't see discounts for pensioners. We don't see discounts for scholars and students, people who could use the train in off-peak periods. That should have been done right from the beginning. We could have increased this. But now when we look at Metrorail is a different model. We're buying the trains cash, and government is paying for that out of our taxes, but there's no guarantee later because, of course, PRASA owns the rail, owns the trains. It's a different model. We just invest in the rolling stock. It's a big investment, but then there's not any ongoing liability like we have with the Gautrain. And it starts to look like the Gautrain is there for the rich and the middle class, whereas the poor have to suffer. That's not Barbara's fault. That is a fault of the way government has approached this particular project. We're putting a large amount of money in to run this project, more than we originally anticipated, whether it's the construction costs or whether it's the ridership guarantees. Both are in excess of what we planned.
We're running out of time, so we need to look forward from here on out. How long? You say 3 years is going to be 3 years according to your model right now, and estimates that government will have to subsidise us through this patronage guarantee. I mean, how many more unforeseen events, though, have you built into that model? Because, for example, the water seepage problems, cable theft are also issues that eat away at the operating cost of the Gautrain.
Well, the water seepage problem in the Rosebank Tunnel is not that cost will not be for the province. Again, it's a PPP project. Construction risks are the risk of the concession company. That is currently taken to the Arbitration Foundation of South Africa, and I think we'll have a ruling by towards the end of August, September. So that matter is being discussed at that level. Looking at extensions to the system, we are receiving in 2 weeks' time pre-feasibility studies on extensions from Hatfield to Menlyn, Rhodesfield to the East Rand, Park Station to Soweto.
Who's going to pay for that?
Well, that's that again. You know,
The taxpayer.
Well, if the taxpayer needs a system that is fully operational, you know, it's quite strange that the DA is blaming Gautrain for being for the rich and for the poor. You know, if that comes from the other quarters of the government, you know, you can actually
No, we speak for the poor as well as for the rich, quite frankly, and we have got 70% of our members are black and poor, so I must speak for them as well.
But I think we are beyond the point whether Gautrain is affordable. For whether it's going to be a white elephant, it's proof that it's not being a white elephant. We're beyond the point to say that for who is it? Is it for the poor people? Is it for the rich people? Government have to provide public transport for everyone in the country. The person that gets in a suit from Sandton and the person that gets in an overall from Soweto, whatever the case may be. What we are looking at, the quicker we can pay off our patronage guarantee, and the quicker we can service the loan that the province had on the Gautrain, then we can start looking at, the extensions that I've mentioned is not that we're going to do tomorrow or next year. We have to plan, like they said, to say today for what is happening in 5 or 6 or 10 years' time that we're looking at.
Yeah.
The future plans, if I may just comment on those, the first one is that water problem is not going to go away. Barbara is quite correct in saying that there's going to be an arbitration and a decision about the costs of the current problem. However, once the concessionaire's contract comes to an end after 15 years, they hand that train back to government, to us, to the taxpayer. And the future costs of pumping water out of that hole, which are going to be more than what they are now because the volume will increase over time, not decrease over time, is going to be borne by the taxpayer again.
Is the system just
We're
going to
going
collapse,
to have to pump the water.
Is the system just going to collapse? Because the reality is that the Gautrain has been built, and their hopes that it can, their hopes that it ultimately can attract 110,000 commuters and grow from there on out. What can we do to get to that point?
I don't believe that the system's going to collapse. I just think it's going to be expensive. I think pumping that water out is going to be very expensive. Secondly, many of the routes for example, a route to Soweto or a route to the East Rand, already have rail line laid now, and PRASA is ordering brand new state-of-the-art trains to run from Soweto to Park Station and from Park Station to the East Rand, which includes the Roadfield station where the Gautrain runs. I don't believe, and the Democratic Alliance does not believe, the Gautrain should be extended along existing routes where Metro Rail can provide an excellent service once the new rolling stock and the new signals are in place.
That's only 20 years' time, though.
No. The new rolling stock will arrive for Metro Rail in 2015, and they're currently already constructing the new signalling system that is costing per province about 1.8 billion rand. The contracts were awarded already, and they're currently under construction. So we're going to have new signalling on those lines. We're going to have brand spanking new trains assembled in South Africa, state-of-the-art new trains on those lines that Metro Rail will provide. To build another wider gauge train line right next to the Metro Rail line to extend the Gautrain is nonsensical. We cannot afford to spend that kind of money when it will already be there. We just need to wait to get over the 2015 hump so that the ramp up of the construction of the new Metro Rail trains come online, and then that problem goes away. There may be a case for a slight extension to Menlyn Park in Pretoria because there isn't an existing rail line. But where there are existing Metro Rail lines with a new rolling stock and the new signals coming, we don't need Gautrain extensions to duplicate at the taxpayer's expense on different gauge lines which are not interchangeable with Metro Rail. It's just a waste of money.
I think what Ian didn't hear what I said, we were busy with pre-feasibilities that will go into feasibility. So we will ask the DA and Joe Public and everyone in the for comments if we deem it technically and financially feasible before we even go to get to a public stage. So it's
but hearing the argument here, it makes logical sense that the Metro Rail should be used in those
That's
spaces.
why we're also not running buses in the centre of Johannesburg, because Ria Vaya's running there. That's why we don't have extensive bus planning, buses in Tshwane, because City of Tshwane was supposed to have their bus rapid transport system up and running by now. It's not. So we're trying to, with the Gautrain buses, trying to compensate for until the Tshwane BRT is running in a year or what time.